How would you define happiness?
How would I define happiness? It changes a little bit depending upon who I've talked to in the last few months. But I kind of tend to define happiness as the absence of needing anything more. So I kind of have a negative understanding of happiness in a sense. And the reason I say that is that I've recently spoken to a guy called David Bather Woods, who's a Schopenhauer expert. And Schopenhauer's a pessimist. He's very negative about things. And he defines it as being that state of essentially not being in suffering, not wanting anything. And I think there is something to be said for that happiness is that kind of moment of wherever you are, that sudden realization that everything I have right now is what I need. And everything I have right now is making me content. And I think that sense of gratitude, of limit, and of kind of acceptance, I think is a huge element of happiness. I think, is it Benjamin Franklin once said, it might not be him, we can add it in the show notes, said, that comparison is the thief of joy. I think there's something to be said for that, that ability of, looking over the fence, and looking at someone else's garden and thinking what they have is great. That is the thief of joy. So being able to accept and let what you have and what the moment is right now deepen, I think that's what happiness is, really. Long answer, rambling answer, sorry.
No, you've studied so much philosophy, and right now, as we sit in 2025, that comparison is probably more than ever, right? So do you think we lack that contentment because there is so much more comparison to what you've probably read that was going on hundreds of years ago?
Yeah, well, it's interesting, I think, because there is the happiness industry now, isn't there? And there is an idea of, which is kind of like in this kind of post-Freud emotional kind of literate and emotional incontinent age, that we can talk about happiness and joy so much, and if anything in life is not making you happy, whatever that might be, ditch it, change your path, or do something different. And I think that I don't want to rag on social media, but it's also on TV and in movies. The idea that if you haven't got this certain path or this certain way, then you aren't happy. Of course, that feeds what I was talking about earlier. That feeds a dissatisfaction with what you do have, and the idea that happiness is entirely tailored to every individual in the world. And so what if somebody telling you what they think their happiness is ought to be your model, I think you should always look at that with a certain degree of cynicism. But the problem, of course, is that there is so much what psychologists call projection here. That if people feel as though their life is happy or the right way, that therefore if your life doesn't mirror theirs, you must be unhappy. Do you know what? It's something I've seen in parenting quite a lot, actually. Parenting is an incredibly fraught, kind of passionate area of debate. And because I've got 2 kids myself, and with my first son, we did breastfeeding. Second son, we did kind of bottle feeding. And in both cases, if you tell people that you did one or the other, it implies that what they've done with their kids is somehow wrong. And of course, no one wants to be called a bad parent. And I think something similar is happening with happiness. That if I say to people, like, I'm quite content in my house with my banger of a car, with, like, small salary, whatever, and somebody else comes along and say, well, don't you want more money? Don't you want to go on these expensive holidays, 5-star hotels? Well, mate, that's for you. Possibly that's your happiness. But, the projecting of your happiness onto somebody else's is difficult. So I think that, that degree of contentment and making peace with your own definition. But the fact we're having this conversation, I think, is important to happiness in itself. You mentioned before we came on to record that, you and your friend have talked about happiness in the past. I think those kind of conversations, clarify what you want from life. But I think that the idea that we need to be constantly happy all of the time, it's odd, isn't it? And like, what does that even mean? Like, happiness as an affect, I'm feeling joy, like some kind of like orgasmic level of delight all of the time. I mean, the brain, even the basic understanding of the brain, it doesn't work like that. The brain isn't meant to be constantly experiencing pleasure and happiness all of the time. So if you're talking about happiness as that kind of brain affect, then it's obviously not that. And so I think happiness is a kind of a label or a ribbon that we put around a stage of our life, or a collective experience of our lives, or even like an understanding of what we want from life. And then we say, that is what happiness is. And I think that's why it's obviously hard to grasp and to talk about, because it changes from person to person, and because it's often understood in hindsight, and because it's often a collection of experiences and parts of your life, which will also include hardship and suffering and trials. And I know your past is in athletics and in sports, and that's the classic example of that. The 5 a.m. running outside in the hail is part of the happiness bundle that makes up being a successful athlete. If you took that out, for example, if you said to an Olympian, I could just put you with a magic click of my fingers, give you a magic wand or something, whatever, and put you on the podium with a gold medal around your neck, would that be the same as investing 5 years of your life doing the hard hours and missing your mate's wedding and your dad's funeral, whatever, to be an Olympian? It's different. It's probably not. And likewise, you could get a helicopter to the top of Mount Everest, can't you? What's the point in that sense?
That's a great analogy, getting a helicopter up to Everest. I think from what I've seen, and I agree with the parenting thing, I actually spend a lot of time around parents, even though I'm not one and I don't have a horse in the race yet. I would say that the idea of what is happy has been confused and it's been complicated. And if you really look around at those people who are content and happy in what they're doing, there is a real simplicity to it as well. And again, I am in Spain right now, and I see that around. I see more ability to be content in the present moment than other countries such as England or maybe America and Australia that I've been to. And I think it's due to its simplicity here, the simplicity of culture, the simplicity of and even the depth of the conversation as well, which, if you enjoyed that clip with Jonny and you want to enjoy even more of the episode, then you can go to the full unedited version of the episode by just clicking right here. Go on, go.